Before we begin tonight's story, if you're drawn to whispers in the dark, secrets buried deep, and spirits that never left, then subscribe to the channel and hit the bell, because what comes next is not something you want to miss. Chapter 1: The Mother Who Buried Her Child with a Piece of Cloth. I was never given a name, never opened my eyes. I was wrapped in a torn piece of my mother's dress, buried hastily beneath an old cottonwood tree. But I still remember every single thing. The rain in Arkansas that night, on the edge of a small forest in Arkansas, rain fell. It didn't bring life. It brought something old, painful, and freezing cold. The young woman, pale blonde hair, sunken cheeks, held something wrapped in a thin cloth. No one went with her. No one knew she had ever been pregnant. She didn't cry, just bowed her head, walked deep into the woods, to the base of an old cottonwood, tall, gnarled, with roots pushing up from the ground like blackened claws gripping the wet earth. She dug with her hands, no shovel, no gloves, just bare, bloodied, bluish hands trembling, digging in silence. Inside the torn cloth was me. No name, no grave. I didn't live more than a few minutes after birth. No birth certificate, no first hug, no boy or girl written on any document. Just a small body, quickly growing cold under the February rain. People might think a child like that would vanish. No memory, no trace. But I stayed. I never left that forest. But because I had nowhere else to go, I lay beneath that tree for decades. Still remembered the smell of the soil. Still felt the rain seep through the earth, gently dripping onto the cloth that once wrapped me. People on the outskirts of hope. Arkansas called that forest Black Hollow. No one went there after sunset. They said it was where the nameless were buried, criminals, stillborn babies, missing, homeless, dumped prostitutes. No gravestones, no flowers, just shallow holes covered with branches and time. I wasn't alone. There were dozens, hundreds of souls like me. We didn't talk in words. We just knew each other, recognized each other by the things we brought down with us. A broken comb, a ruined doll, a rusted wedding ring, or just a half-burned black and white photo. We had rules. Never leave the place where you were buried. Never appear in daylight. Never touch the living, unless absolutely necessary. No one led us. No one gave orders. We just existed, drifting around the wreckage of memory. There was no time here, only haunting. October, new moon. 5 college students from Little Rock drove into Black Hollow. They were filming for their YouTube channel about cursed places, night vision cameras, drones, flashlights. The video title, Buried Alive, Forbidden Forest, Exploring Arkansas, Nameless Graveyard, not for the faint of heart. I saw them from afar. I wasn't angry, just quietly watched. We, the spirits, usually didn't interfere. The living came, the living left. Sometimes with chills, sometimes forgetting the way out. But that night was different. One of the girls, black hair, wearing cross earrings, wandered off to pee. She stepped wrong, right on the spot I was buried. A cold wind swept by. The cloth my mother wrapped around me, decayed but still there, surfaced through the thin soil. She bent down to pick it up. Oh my God, what is this? A rag. Gross. Damp and stinks. I felt a shiver, not from the cold, but from fear of losing it. The cloth was the only thing connecting me to my mother, the only proof I had ever been born. I drifted closer to the girl. I didn't walk, I floated. She shivered, then returned to the group, tossing the cloth onto her backpack, not thinking twice in the group. There was a guy, buzz cut, combat boots. Name was Derek. He was different from the rest. Didn't joke, didn't flinch. Just looked at the forest like he already knew every branch, every patch of soft earth. An old soul next to me whispered, "He buried a woman's body here once. Not 4 steps from where you are." I looked at him, saw no guilt, only emptiness. We usually made the living afraid, but for the first time, I felt a soul afraid of a human. They set up tents, played music. By midnight, every flashlight flickered. The drone crashed. The cameras blurred. A girl named Ashley disappeared first. No scream, just a footprint leading into a bush, then gone. Called, they yelled, but the forest stayed silent. We didn't take her, we just pulled her away from Derek because she was pregnant with his child. I touched Eli, another in the group, the only one who sensed something was wrong. When I touched him, he saw images, a motel room, Derek and Ashley, an argument, a punch, scream, blood, then a hole in the forest. He had buried his ex-girlfriend here. Eli trembled. "You killed someone." Derek looked at him, didn't blink. "I'm not letting any of you leave here alive." The wind howled. For the first time in decades, my mother appeared. She stepped out from the shadows. No screaming, no tears, just stared at Derek. I drifted beside her. She took back the cloth, the one that had once wrapped me, and burned it in her hand. No flame, just a thin white smoke, like mist. Saw her face for the first time, no longer young. Her eyes, were still the same as that rainy night, full of resolve and pain. The forest floor beneath Derek cracked open. From the darkness, the girl he killed rose, bruised face, tangled hair, but eyes bright like the new moon. She didn't touch him, just stood there, then whispered, "I never disappeared. I was just waiting for this day." Derek screamed. He ran, but the roots caught his feet. The ground swallowed him slowly. Without a sound, Eli stood still, didn't run, scream. He placed a red thread at the base of the cottonwood, like the ones tied to newborns' wrists in hospitals. He whispered, "I don't know your name, but you existed, and now I'll remember." I returned underground. My mother vanished into the smoke. I no longer had the cloth, no longer needed it. For the first time in all these years, someone living knew I had once existed, and that was enough. I am no longer buried by silence. I am buried in memory, and memory outlives any grave. 10 years later, the forest of Black Hollow, once called Dead Land, now lies at the edge of a rising town named New Hope, Arkansas. A modern neighborhood is growing with paved streets and bright signs. They planned to clear the forest for show homes. No one remembered what happened there. No more videos online. No one knew the students who disappeared. Only Eli and memory. He had long left the state, lived in silence, avoided media, even avoided himself. But one cold, dry October day, he came back. His hair was graying. He held a small notebook and a bouquet of white flowers. When he stepped into the forest edge, the first thing he saw was the cottonwood still standing. No one dared cut it. No one knew why. They just said, "The machines break every time they get near." He went to the old spot. The soil still softer than the rest, as if a small body had never stopped breathing beneath it. He whispered, "I promised I'd return, and I keep my word." He placed the flowers down, along with the notebook, then sat in silence. A soft breeze passed, but the sky had no wind. I was no longer trapped, but I was still here. Not from bitterness, but because I chose to stay. Because now I had a name, Gabriel. The name Eli gave me in that notebook, among the pages about deaths no one remembers. He didn't just write about me. Families, no farewells. The ones forgotten as if they never lived. He donated the notebook to the town library. It wasn't a bestseller, but sometimes someone borrowed it and read. And when they read, I felt light. A group of high school students, 3 of them, came to the forest for a Halloween dare. They stepped on the place where I was buried. I didn't do anything, but they heard a baby crying, soft as wind. No one got hurt, but afterward, one girl named Sarah came back. She brought a small wooden box, placed it on the ground, said, "I don't know who was here, but I think you're still listening." Inside was a tiny stuffed bear and a clean white cloth. I no longer shivered from the cold. That night, for the first time in 10 years, I saw my mother appear again. She didn't cry, just placed her hand where I lay. I had forgiven her long ago, even before I knew what forgiveness meant. I only wanted her to know I had been remembered. And she said, "You've lived through someone's memory. That is a kind of rebirth." Then she turned and walked into the forest. Her figure faded into moonlight. I don't need to be released. I don't need a gravestone. I only need people to remember that small lives once lived, once breathed, and were once left behind in the world's silence. Black Hollow was never turned into housing. They say every time someone tried to lay foundation stakes, the bulldozer flipped, or workers fainted, or local children suddenly got high fevers and whispered to someone who wasn't there. Even when the government tried to flatten the land, it returned to its original shape. Maybe we had become part of this place. No one had a grave, but there were memories. And in the world of the dead, that is enough. People fear ghosts because of the dark. But we are only memories, fragile and honest. The scariest thing is always humans, because they can look at you, hold you, and bury you in silence. Not every death needs a grave, as long as someone remembers. That soul will never fade. Chapter 2. The half-burned photo on the grass. I was never listed in any missing person report. No one called the police. No one searched. My name was never read over a loudspeaker, never printed on a flyer. I vanished like a shadow, silent, leaving no trace. Only one thing proves I ever existed: a half-burned Polaroid photo, lying among the weeds at the edge of an abandoned parking lot. I died in the summer of 1994, right in the middle of the county fair, in the town of Dry Hollow, Missouri. I was 16, had curly brown hair, a crooked tooth on the left, and always carried a camera wherever I went. Not because I wanted to save memories, but because I was afraid I'd disappear, and no one would remember what I looked like. I don't remember how I died. There's a blank space. I remember standing in front of the Ferris wheel. I remember the flickering neon lights and old country music crackling through dusty speakers. I remember taking a photo of a group of friends. Then, nothing. No scream, No pain, just a feeling like being erased from the frame. When I woke up, the fair had gone dark. No people, no laughter. Only me, alone, among the empty booths and plastic trash drifting across the ground. I searched, called my own name. No answer, no echo. No one called back. I walked home, but it was empty. My family had moved away. People said I ran off with an older boyfriend, but I never had a boyfriend. No one looked further. A teenage girl disappears in America. Just another nameless number in millions of faded stories. I began to drift. No body, no shadow, only awareness. I floated through the seasons, through storms, through snow. I stayed in the town because nowhere else spoke my name. No one built a grave. No one wrote an obituary. No one remembered who I was until the summer of 2023, when 3 kids snuck into the old fairgrounds to film a TikTok video. They turned on flashlights, laughed loudly, kicked through rotten fences to shoot scenes of a ghost town. One of them, a blonde boy with a film camera, picked something up from the tall grass. It was the Polaroid, a scorched photo. The top left still held my face, half a smile, eyes sparkling under fairground lights. He stared at it like he was hypnotized. And for the first time in 30 years, I felt someone see me. I followed him. I didn't know why. Maybe because the photo still held a piece of my soul, like an anchor between 2 worlds. He took it home, stuck it on his wall. Every night, before sleeping, he would look at it, maybe from curiosity, maybe from sadness. But I felt something. He was lost to Dot at first. I only watched, quietly. But then, I began to interfere with his cameras. Lights flickered. Laughter echoed in his audio recordings. Every time he was near the photo, my heart beat like I was alive. Again, I wanted to say my name, but I couldn't remember it. I wanted to write, but had no hands. Once, he tried to scan the photo. When he did, the whole house lost power. But on the screen, for one moment, my face appeared fully clear, tear-streaked, as if I were looking at myself from behind a mirror. He started investigating, looking through old missing persons, searching the library, old newspapers, asking the town's elders, and finally, he met a woman named Lorna, a retired nurse who had worked the fair clinic that year. She froze when she saw the photo, not because of me, but because she had witnessed my death. That girl. Someone strangled her behind the Ferris wheel. He dumped her body behind a trash bin. The cleanup crew came the next morning. No one checked carefully. They thought it was a heavy bag of trash, but I saw the blood, and I stayed silent. Why? He asked. Because the killer was the sheriff's son. Who would dare speak up? And then I understood why I was never recorded, why I was never remembered, why no candle had been lit for me in 30 years. Forced to disappear, the boy, his name was Jesse, returned to the fairgrounds. Last night of summer, he brought the photo, placed it exactly where I died. He read my name, Emma Langford, which he had found in a faded newspaper listing. A fair attendees that year, when Jesse said my name, my whole being lit up. I was no longer trapped, no longer a half-burned photo, no longer a blurry half-face in the grass. I was Emma. I had once lived. I had once smiled. And now I was remembered. When Jesse left, I watched him one last time. In his eyes, no more fear, only gentleness. He walked through the night forest, old camera slung on his shoulder, and I knew a part of me would live on in every photo he took. And the half-burned photo, he pressed it between two panes of glass, placed it in a frame, didn't restore it, didn't clean it, just kept it as it was, the way people sometimes only need one remnant to love a lost soul. I don't need a grave. I have a photo, a name, and memory, a thing no fire can burn away. The dead only disappear when no one remembers, but when their name is still spoken, they stay quietly in the flash of every shutter. Episode 3. The Old Man Who Dug His Own Grave. I don't remember the exact day I died. All I know is, when they found my body, my back was arched like a bow, my fingernails broken, full of dirt, and blood clotted beneath the nail beds, as if I had dug my own grave. My name is Howard McKinley, 83 years old, a war veteran. Lived alone on Dry Creek Hill in a wooden cabin built in 1952. No wife, no children, no one left alive to visit. Every winter, I lit the fireplace with unsent letters. Every summer, I sat on the porch, staring down at the forest where they buried the unwanted drifters, prostitutes, petty criminals, unclaimed newborns, a graveyard with no headstones. No names, no prayers, and I was its keeper. No one gave me the job. I claimed it myself. In 1974, I caught 3 kids playing near the lot, stepping on soft mounds like moldy loaves of bread. I told them to scram, never come back. Since then, I planted posts, hung wooden signs, private land, do not dig, but people still came. One night in October, not long ago, I saw flashlights sweeping past my window. 3 teens sneaking into the woods. The sound of shovels hitting stone. They dug something up, and that Something refused to leave alone. Next morning, I went out there. The hole was gaping. A clump of black hair lay beneath the roots. I buried it again, hands shaking, knees burning. But I did it. That night, I heard knocking at the door. Not knocking, pounding. As if someone without hands was using their head. I didn't open it, didn't sleep. I just sat behind the door, gun in hand, knowing it was useless. I wasn't afraid. I've seen soldiers blown apart by mines, heard starving children wail in camps. Death isn't a stranger to me. But this was forgotten death trying to claw its way back. From then on, I started dreaming. In my dreams, a girl in a white dress stood beneath a pine tree, holding a shovel. Each night, she came closer, slowly, eyeless. I called her the one no one needs to remember. Each morning I awoke, there was a new hole next to my house. Soil freshly dug. No footprints, no drag marks, just a hollow in the ground. And I knew they were digging me down, bit by bit. I tried calling the police. They laughed, told me to get my brain checked. Old folks imagine things. They never came, never once. I went to the store, bought cement, poured it by hand around the house like building a wall. That night, all the cement cracked. A handprint pressed into the wet wall, small like a child's, but long like a water snake. I couldn't sleep anymore, couldn't eat. I started going into the woods each morning, took my notebook, mapped out each mound, left a broken branch on each like an apology. I couldn't remember how many lay there. No one could. Then one day, I found a shovel right outside my door. No one left it. No tire tracks, no footprints. Just the shovel, old wooden handle, rusted blade, and my name. Carved into the iron with a knife. Howard, I understood. It was my turn. Not because I was evil. Not because I'd killed anyone. But because I knew, and I had let them lie there without a story. That night, I put on clean clothes, wore my old hat, took the shovel, and walked into the woods. I picked a soft patch of earth beneath the birch tree where moonlight couldn't reach. I dug dot. Each stroke felt like it came from the heart. Not digging from despair, but because I knew it couldn't be avoided. When the hole was deep enough, I sat inside, arms around my knees. Then dirt began to fall, but not by my hands. Someone was burying me. No cold, no pain. Only a sick horse, almost grateful. I don't know who buried me. Maybe the eyeless girl. Maybe one of the children I'd chased away. Maybe the souls I'd once guarded, but never called by name. Now I'm here, beneath the deep soil. No grave, no stone. Just a slight dip in the earth, and when it rains, water pools in a circle like an eye watching the sky. I still keep watch. I hear footsteps passing through the forest. I hear the shovels of kids looking to dig up town legends, and I whisper to the soil, don't let them take anyone else. If they try, bury them with us. Some of the dead need a prayer. Some only need to be remembered. But us, we just want to be left alone. Asterisk, Episode 4. Children play hide and seek under the full moon. I don't remember my name. Only that when the full moon shines down, I see them again. The children in pajamas, barefoot, silently running around the forest behind Halbert Town, where undocumented bodies used to be buried. They play hide and seek. Always that game. Never tic-tac, never tag, just hide and seek. When I was alive, I lived near there. A tattered trailer home, barely 100 meters from the woods. I remember my mother screaming at strange men. Remember the creaking, rot of wood beneath my feet. Remember the door always locked after dark, but I still snuck out. Because the moonlight back then was eerily beautiful, like it was calling me. The first night I met them, I was 7. A girl in a white nightgown, long hair, feet caked in dirt, stood in front of the wooden fence, said nothing, just held out. Her hand pointed toward the woods. I followed. Inside, the children had gathered. 4 of them, 3 boys, 1 girl. No one smiled. No one greeted me. But I knew they were waiting for one more to begin. One of them took a piece of bark, wrote on it with damp dirt. The last one, hiding ... is the one who's lost. They motioned for me to close my eyes, count to 30. I did when I opened them. The forest was ink black. No wind, no rustling leaves, no footsteps, no laughter. Only my own counting echoing in my head, on loop, like it refused to stop. I couldn't find anyone. I ran in circles, saw tree branches shaped like human hands, shallow pits like they'd been dug by small fingers. I cried. I screamed for my mother. Next morning, my mother said she found me sleeping on the porch, face smeared with mud. She slapped me, banned me from ever leaving again. But I went back. Every full moon, I saw them again, in different places, at the rotting tree stump by the creek edge in the fern thickets. Always 5, never more, never less. Only I changed. Then I began seeing other things. Shallow graves with tiny footprints. Rotting children's clothes, buttons still fastened. Bones, small as chopsticks, poking from tree roots. I understood, but not completely. At 13, I stopped. Seeing them, no one played with me. no voices called. I grew up, left town, trained as a mechanic in another state, got married, had a daughter. Full moon night became peaceful. I thought it was all childhood hallucination, till my daughter turned 8 and asked, "Daddy, who's the friend that plays hide and seek in my mirror?" My heart froze. I checked. No one there, but inside the mirror, a handprint. Small, pressed from the inside. I took down the mirror. I burned it. We moved, but in the new house, my daughter still counted. 30, 29, 28. I heard it through the crack in her door, like a ritual. Something passed from my life into hers. When she turned 10, I returned to Halberd, alone. My wife didn't understand. Doctors said I had PTSD. They didn't believe anything was wrong. I went to the forest, now fenced off, with signs reading, "Danger, unstable ground." But on a full moon night, no fence holds spirits back. I entered the woods. On the grass stood 5 small shadows. They didn't turn, didn't wave, just stood there. I sat down, didn't dare breathe. A long-haired girl approached, gently placed a hand on my shoulder. I asked, "Why me? Why my daughter?" She didn't answer, only whispered, "We are the ones no one came to find. So we must always play, hide, and seek." Then all 5 vanished into the mist. I left the forest with only one thing left, an old, scorched photo under a tree. A group of children standing in a line. One of them was me. Faint handwriting on the back, "Hide or be forgotten." Since then, I live in fear every time the full moon rises. I cover every mirror, hide all the clocks, turn off every light. But still, my daughter counts, even though I never taught her, even though she's never heard the story. And I know someday, in some quiet night, I won't hear her counting anymore. Not because she's asleep, but because she's finished hiding. Some children are abandoned by their parents. Some are rejected by death itself. And some are so forgotten their souls no longer know the way home. Episode 5. The Grave Robber Who Never Came Back. I used to be a grave digger. Not in the traditional sense. I didn't cut through decent cemetery plots. Didn't knock on coffins for gold. Didn't steal bodies to sell to medical schools. I dug the unmarked graves. I used to wander all over southern Indiana, places where people were buried without records, where land was once temporary burial grounds for immigrants, for people of color, for refugees, undocumented infants. No headstones, no records, just a patch of oddly shaped dirt. I dug because of rumors. Someone once said, "There's a graveyard in Halberd without graves. But don't be stupid and dig at night. Night is when they wake up." I didn't believe it. I'd slept on the grave of a self-immolated man without dreaming a thing. I'd seen grinning skulls and felt my heart beat steady. So I went to Halberd. No map, just a scrap of old goatskin I bought from a drunk at an antique store. A charcoal drawn circle marked with a red X. Don't dig here. I reached a spot under a crescent moon. The air was unusually cold. Trees swayed without wind. The ground was oddly soft, like it had been dug and reburied by hand. Over and over again, I brought a shovel, flashlight, a plastic bag, and menthol cigarettes. I hadn't gone 40 centimeters when the shovel hit something soft. Not wood, not metal. I reached in, pulled out a piece of cloth, the kind of head wrap worn by black women in the 1800s. Wet, muddy, but cold as stone. I kept digging. My hands were shaking, not from the cold. I'd barely uncovered a third of the body when the scent began to rise. Not rot, but the smell of burnt cloth, burnt hair, and cheap perfume. Then the flashlight flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. I looked up. In the distance sat the forest's edge. Someone was watching. I couldn't see their face, but they had long hair down to the knees, arms hanging limp, and their head tilted like they were listening. I cursed, switched on another flashlight. No one there, but the grave half filled again. I didn't fill it. I looked around. No one. I swear I didn't fill it. I panicked, ran, left the grave open, left the shovel, left the cloth at home. I told a friend. He laughed, said I was imagining things. 3 days later, he died in a strange accident. His car parked in the garage. Engine off, burst into flames from the inside out. No one found a cause. Then the dreams started. In them, I was being buried alive. No coffin, just dirt. Something pulling my legs down, inch, no matter. How I screamed, clawed, tore my nails. I woke up, my fingernails bleeding. Another night. I woke to dirt falling from the ceiling. 3rd floor apartment. No reason for dirt. I tried to apologize. Went back to the woods. Brought flowers, lights, and the clean scarf. But I couldn't find the spot. The whole forest looked different. Every tree identical. Every mound of soil bore marks as if all had been dug and reburied. I got lost. Took me 2 days to get out. Since then, I've lived like I'm being watched. When I look in the mirror, someone's always behind me. When the wind blows, I hear faint laughter. When I step outside, muddy footprints appear on my floor. Small as a child's, leading straight toward me. I know they won't let go. I know I disturbed what should never be touched, because that night I didn't just dig up a grave. I uncovered what they used to hold on: the cloth, the burnt hair, a scrap of shirt, those little pieces that remember being human. And humans, when forgotten, can grow angrier than any ghost. A month later, I vanished. They found my house with the door open, a pot still boiling on the stove. No signs of robbery. Only one thing in the center of the living room floor: an old shovel standing upright in a mound of dirt, and on it, a half-burned scarf. Never dig where there's no headstone. Some souls don't want to be remembered, and they don't want to be found.